Okay, so this is a presentation that I got from a colleague at Hamlin University, and I like using it, so I'm going to kind of steal some of his work. Now, standards-based grading is basically a different assessment that you can use with your students. So I'm going to pose the following question to you. If you had the following students and you could only choose one of them to pack your parachute that you're going to be jumping out of an airplane from, which one would you choose? Now, the interesting thing about this is if you look at the average, all three of these students have the same average. The average is above mastery, but stop, think for a minute, pause the presentation if you want. Which one of these students would you want to pack your parachute? Well, hopefully you don't need too much to think about it, but if you're like me, I would kind of want to have student B. Even though all students had the same average, student B had an upward trend showing their mastery. Yet, if you think about it, the average of all of these scores are the same. So what does that mean? That all three students, if we grade them like we do in traditional settings, all three students would have the exact same grade. However, these three students are markedly different. So this is where the idea of standards-based grading comes into play. It's the idea that we're looking at their mastery and where are they finishing off, not necessarily where do they start out at, but where do they all complete the same task. What do we want our students to know? What are the learning? What are the outcomes? And the thing with standards-based grading is you want to be upfront about what it is that you're doing with the students. It's not you're taking a test at the very end and that's going to be your final grade, but rather you're looking at can you explain what's happening? Can you do what's going on? And it's not just a one and done type deal. When you're assessing them about it, standards-based grading students know that they could be assessed at any point in time repeatedly. So even though they think they might have been assessed once and got a good grade with their standards-based grading, you might have to go back and reassess again. So it's going to be a constant learning with the process. So this one was an example of what he did and some of the things that he did. So he did a screencast, you can do pencast, podcast, however you want to assess your students, you can do that. You can assess it in a couple different ways. It can be done orally, it can be done where the students make a video. The students can do a pencast or a screencast. Pencast is where they're writing out, and as they're writing things in, they're explaining a phenomenon, they're explaining a problem, and you're looking at their progress throughout. Now, his standards-based grading involved upper level courses in physics. So he had broken down into the different chapters what are the most important things that you want your students to know. So in this situation, if you look at chapter 6 and chapter 7, can they derive Euler's equation? Can they use Mathematica to find a path that minimizes something? Can they show the Lagrangian method is equivalent to Newton's law? Now, this is kind of above and beyond what we're going to be doing with 8th grade math or science classes. We're not going to be doing Lagrangians in those classes. However, one thing that standards-based grading focuses or forces you to do as the instructor is that it makes you think about what are the key principles and key tasks that I need to do or that I want my students to do in each particular section. So you really need to, as a teacher, think about what are the standards? What are your standards? What do you want your students to learn and to get out of these different chapters? Now, his scale is basically 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, it doesn't meet your expectations. 2, it's approaching your expectations of what it is that you want students to do. 3, it meets your expectations. So 3 would be that this shows your students understanding, they know what the situation is, they know what the requirements are. You have the understanding that you know your students understand what is happening, what is going on with this particular standard. So you feel comfortable that they understand your standard. A 4, this is kind of a neat way that I always think about describing that the exceeding expectations is this is something that you would talk to your spouse about or significant other or a friend or a family. We're not talking about, so what did you do in school today? It's like, one of my students, this is what they did. I wanted them to talk about, the Tampa Bay ecosystem. Not only did they talk about it, but they showed pictures and they really showed the connection. So This is something where it's just like you got wow. And that's kind of a way you can think about what an exceed expectation is. So you can go through and you can kind of make up your own skill as to what it is you want them to do. So he gives a couple ways of what he's doing. You have screencasts. This is where they're kind of exactly what I'm doing now. So I'm going through, I'm doing some type of presentation, and I'm explaining what this is to you. Pencast, I don't know if it's going to work, but you can basically see, yeah, that's what I thought it was closed. So it's a situation where these are ink pens that they're using like Paint or Draw or some type of program that as they're writing it in, it's recording as they're typically writing. And so they're talking into the pen. So you're seeing their work. Now, a lot of times in physics, this might be a back of the book 2-3 part problem that they're kind of working through, or they're using a problem as an example to describe it. It might be they're drawing a picture or they're doing connections. So these are a couple different ideas that you can do for your class. Now you can also, depending upon the level of your students, you can also do what's called collaborative scoring, where you can have someone give an in-class presentation and follow it up with questions from the group, questions that you ask, and you can have your students, again, depending upon the level, they can score your classmates as well too, whether it be a 1, 2, 3, 4 system. 8th grade, 6th grade, this really is going to be dependent upon your students and what you know about them. You might do it in honors, you may not. And again, this is perfectly up to you, whatever you think would be best for your students. So some advantage of this, some observations that Andrew made was that it creates a low pressure environment. Exams are high pressure, students stress over them, they get really anxious, and they may not perform well during the exams. And so this is an alternative to that type of assessment. It also gives you class time. If I don't have to assess my students all the time with these end of the chapter, end of these marks exams, and I can do these type of assessments in another way, it gives me more time to focus on other things. Or maybe I give them that class time to work on these presentations. Thing about it is you don't have to worry about extra credit. They can go back and they can redo it if they don't like their score. Um, the students, they can help pick the standards if you want them to. They can pick out what they're going to do to demonstrate competency in this particular standard. Because if you think about it, in everyday life, you're not assessed by can I answer this on a multiple choice test in too many professions, but rather, can you demonstrate competency on the job? And if you can, this is something that's good. Standards-based grading in a way can resemble some of what they're going to see in everyday life. So the outcomes, there is a connection to the assessment. So they're much more hands-on and much more involved with the work. Now, there is some pitfalls with this. When you first try it out, students think that they can do this very easily, and they think that they don't need much time. And so like, oh, well, if I'm not being tested on it, I just have to put something together. And that can be very challenging because they're going to push things off to the very last minute. So if you have procrastinators, this is something that is going to be a challenge for them because they think they can pull it off the night before, and they may not be able to. And so they might actually do worse because they're getting a 1 where there's not meeting any type of expectations. It takes time. So as I said, this is not something where if you like it, you can completely convert everything over to a standards-based grading right away, because for your students, this is going to be something that's completely different. So you're going to have to build it up. You might need to start with one chapter or one section or one part of an assessment or one part of a semester, and then build your way up to it if this is something that you wanted to do. So maybe by the second half of the year, if you are in love with standards-based grading and you think this is something you want to do, then this is something that maybe the second half of the year you could do, but you need to build up to it. So think about how you're going to be building up. There is a lot of grading because with the standards-based grading, you can go back and reassess any standard at any point in time with your students, or they could do the same thing. So a lot of it is subtle. It happens behind the scenes where they send you stuff, you send back the meeting, not meeting, or what type of expectations or whatever type of review that you're going to be setting up. So there is a lot of grading with it. Once you become comfortable with it, the grading can go much quicker. So it's something to kind of keep in mind as to is this something that you want to do in your classroom? Now, there are a lot of other resources out there for you, but this is kind of a quick overview as to what standards-based grading is. I'm going to upload the rubric very shortly. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. This is what I'm here for, and I'm happy to help out. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, please ask.